How we doing? It's JJ. It's 5 o'clock in the evening. About a quarter of an hour left of daylight as such. Middle of February. What a difference, a few days, mates. You know, yesterday was -6 with a wind chill. Today it's a balmy 10 degrees. Crazy. So we finished work early and I've just come out, rigged the full Polish lavu up just to have an hour in the woods. Wasn't really coming out with a real sort of purpose for filming, but in the last couple of videos that I've done, I've had people asking questions about me, and that's always hard to try and put me across, you know, in just one comment on a YouTube video. But I've got a few, and a couple of people kept asking questions about my background and stuff like that, and I just thought, why don't I do just a video, just the story behind me, the story behind JJ. Well, I've always lived in Stevenage in Hertfordshire, which is about 30 miles north of London, and I've always grown up right on the edge of town. And I was lucky that I had grandparents that lived about 2-3 miles away in a lovely village called Aston, and I had aunts and uncles in surrounding villages. So even from an early age, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8, we was always out as a family. My mum, my dad, Mick the Hat, and my sister, and we just tootled off on our bikes, and there was a lovely little ford that we'd ride down to before going to Nan and Grandad's. And where that ford was at the top is where I still have the permission. The woodland where I had the camp, which is no longer, but I still have the wood. But that's where I grew up. I've always had a love for being outdoors, and you know, anyone that's watching this that knows me from a kid, if there was a bike left in the street, it was gone. I was on it. I was off cycling away. And even at, you know, like 8, 9 years old, I'd just leave the street and I'd cycle up to my Nan and Grandad's, and by the time I got up there was a phone call saying it's Justin there, and then my Nan or my Grandad would have to phone back and say, yeah, he's up here, he's safe, he's sound. But back then you just kind of didn't think anything about that in the 70s. My early school years, a lot of my school reports would say that Justin has a fascination for the outdoors and that nature and wildlife, science and geography. If only we could hold his attention in class instead of looking out through the windows. And that sort of carried me on into my sort of teens, through infants, juniors, into senior schools, I still call it. And we overlooked, like, the big school was in like it was a multi-story sort of school. There were like 3 levels to it, and my form was right at the top, and I was able to look over Fairlands Valley Lakes in Stevenage, and I was always kind of getting told, Justin, pay attention. All I wanted to do was like look through that window and see the lakes, and the little islands were there, and a fishing lake, and just be out there. And every lunchtime, you know, if I weren't in the playground, I was jumping over the school wall, and I was out, and just getting into the wood, and getting out by one of the fishing lakes. And we were quite lucky to have that on our doorstep. I then sort of joined the cadets when I was about 11 years old, and I did that for 5 years. I absolutely loved the cadets. I was in the Air Training Corps, the Air Cadets, and weekends were spent at ranges or RAF Henlow, flying powered gliders and little 2-seaters and that, and I absolutely loved that. But we also did like all the, you know, the combat stuff and bits and bobs like that. You know, like 12, 13 years old, like my formative years, we'd be out with our 177 air rifles and our Diablo catapults and our Rambo knives. And a lot of us in the cadets and that, we'd still go up to the wood that I was eventually have a permission in. In that wood, there is still an ammo can box with a Rambo knife in, and a little hexi burner and a couple of bits. I remember burying it for some reason when I was about 15. I've got a rough idea where it is, but it's buried. I'd have to get a metal detector to actually find it. I left school. I was accepted straight away to join the army into a regiment that I'd always wanted to join, which was the Grenadier Guards, and I was lucky enough to get into that, and I was served in the Guards for a few years. Ultimately, it ended up not being the regiment that I really wanted it to be. It was kind of like a bullshit regiment, and you know, it's sort of like spit and polish, and you had to know 350 years of history of the Guards, you know, in case you were questioned while you're on sentry duty at Buckingham Palace or St James's Palace, Windsor Castle. And I took away a lot from those years in the army, a lot of good memories and also a lot of bad memories. A lot of the bad stuff that I took away is, you know, the leadership, the hierarchy really didn't work for me. The way they actually went about trying to instill in you like a knowledge and a correct way of going about it was all bullshit, a lot of it. And the way you were treated was absolutely terrible in the 80s. It really was. It was rifle bullying and that in certain regiments, and I saw a lot of stuff that I kind of took away, and I thought, if ever I'm in charge of people or I have a group of people around me, I want to inspire them, not beat them down, you know. Just because that's the way it has to be done doesn't necessarily mean that's the right way of going about it. Listen to people. People always have different ideas of going away things, and I hope that's kind of followed me through the years. When I come out of the army, I spent a couple of years, I wasn't really happy. You know, I was drinking too much and stuff like that. And then just one day, I remember walking down into WH Smith's down in the town centre. I remember getting a copy, I think it was The Great Outdoors or Trail Walker, and in the back was an advertisement. Instructors wanted for an activity centre down in Dorset, and I thought, that's for me. And around that time, there'd just been the Lyme Regis disaster. And I don't want to go back into that too much. It had been a canoeing, sort of kayaking accident, tragedy, and it kind of shook the outdoor industry up. So they were looking for like a lot of new staff to come in and get trained up to a specific standard. And that completely transformed me. I spent a good few years working in the outdoor industry, you know, kayaking, canoeing, air rifle shooting, archery, navigation, high ropes, low ropes, windsurfing, water skiing, you name it. I absolutely loved it. At any spare time we would be out. If we weren't teaching, we were down, you know, like Studland Bay or Kimmeridge. We were climbing, we canoed down the rivers, and I absolutely loved it. I came back, I started a family, and I kind of fell into the bike trade. I'd always been a mountain biker, I've always been a cyclist, and I always will be. Ultimately, I just got so engrossed in it, it became all consuming, and it kind of ended up kind of wrecking my marriage. And that was a really sort of difficult decision when the marriage ended, and I'm happy to talk about that. A lot of it was my fault, you know. We just kind of went our separate ways, but we had a beautiful daughter, Paige, and we decided it would just be better to sort of remain like good friends rather than being partners. But I learned a lot of lessons from that. You know, don't become all consumed in one thing. And ultimately, because I was so consumed by the cycling side of things, you know, just spending a ridiculous amount of money on mountain bikes and just going away on holidays with the lads, I wasn't really including my family, and that had to stop. So I learnt lessons from that. With that breakdown of the marriage come a sort of spiral of depression, and I wasn't in a really good place, and I'd kind of like left the mountain bike side alone after about 8 years ago, where I completely smashed myself up properly on a mountain bike up in North Wales. But North Wales was like a spiritual home for me, and I longed to return. And just over 3 years ago, my mum passed away, and I just got away immediately after the funeral. My head was not in a good place, and I went to North Wales, and I just completely ignored all my own safety protocols, climbing Trafan in the middle of March in absolutely horrid weather. And I just kept ignoring things like warning signs that I was going off the wrong path. I wasn't checking my map and compass. The cloud has come down, and ultimately I've become completely crag fast on a rock on the side of Trafan in an area that I really shouldn't have been in. And it was like a make or break. I was crag fast for about 15 minutes, and I always swore to myself I'll never get in that situation where I'd have to call mountain rescue, and I was seconds away from it. And then I did a really stupid thing. I decided to make a break for it, just have one final push, and in hindsight, when I made that final push over a part I was really stuck at, 2 climbers come down and said, we were trying to make our way to you, you shouldn't have done that push because the weather was really closing in. Hand on heart, if I'd have slipped, I would have fallen. I may not be here today. That's how serious it was. And the funny thing was that when I got back down, I cried. I properly cried in the car, and I made my way back down to Betsy Coed, down to the big pub hotel, Royal Oak I think it's called, and my best mate Dave Darcy was making his way up to meet me, and I'd message him to say I'd just been in that situation, and he read me the riot act, and rightly so. And we then kind of spent a couple of days in North Wales, and we just kind of addressed that situation, the space that my head was in. And then, you know, it was at this point I was really starting to get into the bushcraft and wild camping. Slowly but surely I started to join groups, and I started to think, do you know what, I used to have all these skills, I used to love doing all this, and I slowly started to immerse myself into the groups, buying kit, and here I am today. You know, it's taken a couple of years to get over that real sort of bout of depression. You know, I've kind of spoken about this in a video that will have come out before this, that my head wasn't in a good place, but just by going out and that again, I found nature, and nature found me, and it actually saved my life. It did. Sorry, that's a really hard thing for me to say, but hand on heart, I found myself with that love for the outdoors and that, and learning knowledge, and that I've always had a capacity for learning, and I've just listened to people, and here I am today. This is it. I absolutely love doing this. Do you know what, I buy a lot of kit, but do you know what, 90% of the time you'll see me with a 50, 60 pound Polish Lavu instead of a 200 pound snug pack tent, you know, which I do love, but I just love this setup. I love the old school, do you know what I mean? I'm a man of green, I'm a man of the woods. I love the bushcraft, I love the wild camping, and you know what, the last year now, we're a year into like lockdown version 98 of COVID 75 variant or whatever it is now. You know, it's absolutely bonkers, and we can't go out, we can't properly camp. I know people are, but I can't do it. I have a moral obligation, not only to myself and my partner, but my daughter and my dad, Mick the Hat, who some of you have met. You know, Dad's in his mid-70s now, he's had his jab, and you know, I can't be mixing with too many people. So, you know, I have a really important job which I've fallen into in the last year in logistics. You know, we deliver medical supplies and all sorts, and I have to mix around with people. You know what, if you want to go out camping, but don't brag about it on Facebook and that, because you know, just Facebook can you can just get ripped a new one. And if you're going to do it, go out and do it. You don't have to brag to the world, you know. But I understand why people want to go out, but also I understand why people, and quite rightly, are not going out. But here I am today. I mean, do you know what, my house is like 5 minutes walk over that way, and it's just a small little wood. I like to come out for an hour, practice some skills, set my kit out. I always bring my kit out. Could just bring the Lavu and a gas stove. Let's turn it off. Let's have a brew. But I just like to come out, practice the kit that you're going out with, because I long for that day when we're actually able to properly go back out again and meet your friends and have a camp out. So that's my story behind me. Do you know what, I fell into the groups, and certain groups work for you and some don't, and there will always be people out there that are ready to bring you down, but 99.99% of the people in groups are absolutely fantastic. They'll ask you questions, you ask them questions. There is so much knowledge out there. I've been amazed, so much knowledge in the people in the community. I have formed some amazing bonds of friendship, you know, the brothers and sisters of the wood, and the bushcraft side, the wild camping side, some amazing people. I can't wait to just get out there again and meet them when we're able to. This is the story behind me. I hope that gives you a little bit of background information. One day we'll meet up. We'll do that, we'll meet up. When the shows can go ahead, when the gatherings can go ahead, we'll meet up. I can't wait to spend a bit of time around a campfire with you all. Any more questions, just whack them in the comments. You know, I always try and reply to all the comments that are left in my videos, and that's the same in the groups and that as well. This is the story behind JJ. It's a continuing story, it's an evolving story. I've got so much to learn. Do you know what? A lot of people say, wow, your skill set, your knowledge, that's ridiculous. I'm like down here. There are people up there that I really look up to, and I'm not going to name them because there's far too many of them. I am literally in awe of some of the people that are out there in the community, and you know, they don't big themselves up, and I'm not going to do that on camera, but I can't wait to meet some of them. I've already met a lot of them, and I want to meet a lot more. I do this for the sheer love of it. I've got just time to give to people, and I want to learn from people. That's my story. I hope it gives you a little bit more of an insight. That's enough waffling. Thanks for tuning in. Catch up again soon. You take care. Bye.